I spent kind of the first 43 years of my life mostly as a victim. When I took responsibility for the life that I created for myself so far in my life, I then realized that I had the power to create what I do want. So triggers are when something happens or someone says something and that triggers a memory from our past. Then we react, and that reaction is not about what's happening in front of us. It's you're reacting to what happened in your past. The base emotion of anger is fear. So if you see someone who's really angry, they're actually fearful of something. The universe or God, whatever you want to believe in, wants you to be the best version of yourself. That's the aim of God and the universe. Is it wants you to be the best version of yourself. And so it tests you.
What can people start today?
So there's a process.
Hi, Colin. Welcome to the show today. Let's start just by getting a bit of context to your life. So tell me a bit about you. What do I need to know?
Hi, thanks for having me on here. So I guess I spent kind of the first 43 years of my life mostly as a victim. I didn't enjoy life. I felt it was inconvenient. I've tried suicide a few times when I was younger, just really struggled through life. I didn't have a great childhood either, for various different reasons, and it was just there was just a lot of that kind of that sort of thing going on, and I spent a long time, I guess from in my very early 30s going like there's got to be a better way, like I'm looking around and I'm seeing people and not everyone's as miserable as me, there's got to be a better way. And so I did quite a few different I guess modalities is the right word in terms of personal development, and I learned some stuff um, it was helpful. It was interesting, but it wasn't life changing. It wasn't like it didn't fix the problem for all intents and purposes. I mean, you're not broken and you don't need fixing, but you probably need a better mindset about stuff. And so I never really, found. So I found stuff that helped a little bit, but nothing that really kind of changed. And until I did quite a lot of work with a guy called William Whitecloud. In fact, I actually started doing some work before that, but that was really instrumental and that worked for me. Just I did a lot of his courses and that sort of thing, and it just really changed everything for me. It just really took me out of being a victim and put me into a creator mode. And I guess the biggest thing was that when I took responsibility for the life that I created for myself so far in my life, I then realized that I had the power to create what I do want. So I've created everything. Okay. I've created all the bad stuff for me. So I've actually managed to create bad stuff for me. And therefore I have the ability to create good stuff if that's what I want. And so that was really instrumental in doing that. Self-responsibility, just awareness, a lot of things around awareness and how you're being, and with all these things, there's layers. There's different. There's awareness, and then there's another layer of awareness, and the same with self-responsibility. You can be responsible. You can be responsible for what's going on around you, and then you can take that deeper and go, actually, I'm responsible for that too. And the deeper and deeper you go, the more responsibility you take on yourself. And I'm not talking about blame. I'm talking about, it's like, okay, I'm creating this in some way. Then it just empowers you to be able to go, okay, so this is what I've created a bad day. I've created this, whatever happened to me. So let's set our intention and let's create something a lot better for me and tomorrow, and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's kind of, and I suffered with depression my whole life as well, from a very young age, and PTSD as well. The interesting thing about PTSD is that I didn't really believe I had it, because I thought, well, you only get it from going into battle or something like that. But the reality was my whole life was a battle. I was in fight mode 24 hours a day for my whole life up until then. And depression. So depression, so I mentioned briefly, I cured my own depression, and that wasn't through tablets, or because you go to the doctor and they just give you tablets and off you go. And that doesn't actually, okay. I used to have I'd have highs and lows. So very nice highs and lows, to the point I actually got comfortable. So I was like, okay, I know that I'm going to be really bad for 2 weeks, and then I'll be fine for 6 weeks, and then I'll be really bad for 2 weeks. And that was, I don't know if the word's familiar, but that was what I could cope with. And then getting onto antidepressants help kind of even that out a bit, but it still doesn't solve the problem. And what I learned through the work that I've done on myself is that depression is the perceived sense of powerlessness, and that's as simple as it gets. Is that whatever you're going through, whether it's something that happened in your childhood and you were in a powerless state, and then you felt that energy of that powerlessness for the rest of your life until you realized, actually, I'm not powerless. You could have an incident, where, gosh, it could be in a relationship, it could be an incident at a shopping mall where someone's got a gun, or there's lots of different incidents, less dramatic incidents as well, like that could make you feel powerless, lose your job, etc. And that perception of powerlessness just puts you in a depressive state. And if you can have the awareness to understand that you're not actually powerless, that okay, let's make a plan. So I've lost my job, right? So what are we going to do about it? As opposed to go, okay, I'm a victim. This always happens to me, and so on. So it's just that mindset thing. So getting out of that mindset of being powerless, or that perception, because it's a perception, it's not reality. And getting out of that perception that you're powerless then helps you to go, okay, let's make a plan. Let's see what we can do here.
So there is a link then between that sort of victimhood mentality and the depression, because both of them stem from that you don't have the power over your own life.
Yeah.
You're stripped back. And do you think there's people who have that sort of victim mentality but aren't depressed, or do you think it actually ties in very similarly?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people are a victim, and not necessarily depressed. I think you see it all the time when someone will get into a situation, or they will. I mean, even somebody will wind you up, or they'll they'll get you to react, and then when you react, then they become the victim.
Yeah.
That kind of scenario. And there's lots of different types of things, where somebody becomes, because of an incident, they become the victim, even though they caused the incident in the first place, for example. But yeah, I think a lot of us go into victim mode. And yeah, you're right, it is closely linked to powerlessness, but it's more a lack of taking responsibility and just becoming a victim.
What's the difference between as such blaming yourself and accepting responsibility? Because I can see that if you blame yourself, that is
Yeah.
it can cause the depression and things like that. But equally, accepting responsibility for whether it's the situation you're in or the way that you deal with the situation, because there will be times when a situation is out of your control, but you do have control how you react to it.
Yes. Yeah, so there is a distinct difference, because blaming yourself means that you've kind of accepted the situation, and now you're going into victim mode again, as opposed to going, okay, so I've done that, so your past is over. Whatever happens, whatever's going on in your life, whatever's happened to you in your past is over. We don't have time machines, so we can't go back and fix it or change it or anything else. Like, it is what it is. Your past has happened. So now we have to move forward, and it's important that we move forward and not blame and that sort of thing is very much a wasted emotion, because it doesn't change anything. Like, you can sit there and blame yourself for something you said or something you did when you were 10 years old, and it doesn't change it.
No.
It doesn't change anything. So it's not about blaming yourself. It's like going, okay, let's do better. And that's what it's all about, is like, let's do better. Okay, we did this. I'm not proud of it, because we've all done things, especially at our age, we've all done things in our life that, weren't helpful to somebody else or even to ourselves. And we wish we could have done better. So it's about the awareness of going, okay, that wasn't the best thing to do. So let's be better.
Yeah, that accepting, I guess, some responsibility and understanding, but equally then being able to move on. And I guess this is, do you believe in that sort of training your brain in the way that it operates? Because our brains very often work on patterns, don't they? And they will find a shortcut. So if we're used to blaming ourselves, it will very quickly blame ourselves. And do you have to interrupt that pattern, or tell me how you think people can move forward from being a victim to taking responsibility?
So it's very much so negative self-talk is extremely bad for you, because when you blame yourself, or when you become a victim, or when you tell yourself, okay, well, I'm rubbish because I should have done better, so I'm really bad at this. Or and again, these kind of internal conversations can come from when you were a child and your parents used to tell you off for doing something, and that stays with you. And you'll find that when you if you have an accident or something, like drop a cup and break a cup or something,
Mm.
it'll take you back to the moment 20, 30, 40 years ago when you broke a cup and your dad shouted at you, or your mum shouted at you, or something like that. And you actually go back into that same energy of when you did that. And that's really disempowering. And that really affects you, because you're like, oh. But it comes back to self-awareness. It's like going, okay, I'm not actually that child from all that, 20, 30, whatever it is, years ago. I'm an adult now. Okay, it's done. You can't unbreak. It's a really good metaphor, actually, when a plate or a cup falls over and breaks on the floor. It's like, well, you can't fix it. It's
No.
done. So, it's done. But yeah, that negative self-talk, that's really what affects your brain. And it's so important to be aware of that, and not even joke around, because a lot of people will joke, they'll make a joke about, like, oh, well, I'm really rubbish at this, or, yeah, I'm just something like that. They'll just make a joke of it, but it's actually really self-destructive to do that. So, it's important to be aware of when you're doing that and stop. Bruce Lee was very much, he's talks a lot. He used to talk a lot about negative self-talk.
Yeah, there is that thing about sort of joking about your flaws. And I think
Yeah,
lots of people do it, and I've been guilty of doing it, as if I point out my own flaws, then I've got the power over them rather than someone else being able to, I
yeah.
almost
You
want
try
to
and jump
joke
the gun,
about them.
don't you?
Yeah, try and jump the
Yeah,
gun because I don't want anyone else pointing them out.
yeah,
But
yeah.
equally, it's not necessarily healthy to do that.
No, definitely not. No, because you are training your brain all the time in reality.
Mm.
So you're telling your brain, okay, I am powerless, or I am rubbish at doing something, or I can't swim. I'll never be able to swim. If for example you want to start learning something, it's like, oh, you'll probably drown, or you'll be rubbish at that, like everything else. And so you'll go, okay, well, there's no point trying then. So it's all those things have an effect, have a knock on effect just from a thought.
I guess there is a bit of a sliding scale here as well. I mean, you spoke earlier on about you were quite depressed and you had suicidal thoughts and
Yeah,
things like that. But equally, there'd be lots of people who wouldn't necessarily class themselves as depressed, but they're holding themselves back because they
yeah,
don't have that self belief in them. I mean, just to talk about you've gone from quite a far end, and you spoke about those highs and the lows, and I often see it like a pendulum that
yeah.
unfortunately the higher quite often people go who have suffered from depression, and I have as well, then the lower we go when it hits.
Yeah,
Do
it
you think
can
that's a
do.
good analogy?
Yeah, I mean, it's all just kind of like a mind game almost, because it's not real. That's the the reality is it's not real. It's a lot of your thoughts and feelings are actually made up. So you make them up what you think they are. They're not actually real. So when you're thinking about stuff that you can't do, or that you are depressed, or that you're feeling powerless, or none of that is actually real. In reality, it's not actually real. You're making something up in your head to deal with a situation. So what happens again as a child when we go through various different incidents, that our brain tries to protect us. So if I'm just trying to think of an example, but our brain will, if an incident happens, our brain will try and make it that it's not as bad as we think it is, and so it'll try and make it, it'll trap the emotions for a start. So this is a big problem as well, is that we have lots of trapped emotions, and this is what triggers are. So triggers are when something happens or someone says something, and that triggers a memory from our past. And because it's quite an intense memory and there's an emotion attached to it, so the emotion is in our body, then we react. And that reaction is not about what's happening in front of us. It's you're reacting to what happened in your past. So you can have an argument with your partner, and the reality is that both of you are actually arguing about your past and not about what you think you're arguing about. You think you're having an argument about, who left the rubbish out or didn't bring the rubbish back in. But what you're actually arguing about is how it made you feel 20 years ago when that happened and something else happened, and then someone shouted at you, and then, there was a big incident, and then you just hid all the emotions and pretend it didn't happen. But all these emotions sit inside you, and that's really unhealthy. And that causes physical issues in your body as you get older, because you've got all these trapped emotions inside you.
You do see that with arguments, and I'm sure we've all been in those situations, that the argument goes on so long that almost by the end you're not quite sure what you were originally arguing
Exactly.
about.
Yeah.
And that sort of shows that the what it was that triggered it wasn't probably that big a deal, but it
Yeah.
suddenly triggered us into this spiral of just
Yeah.
blaming other people, bringing up other things, and just,
Yeah.
ending up down an entire rabbit hole.
And it's all about putting you back in that, it almost time travels you back into that original time that happened and how it made you feel. And you just go back to being a little boy or a little girl being told off for something, and how it made you, it made you feel powerless, and it made you feel really small and insignificant and all these things. And then when you have this argument with somebody today, you just go back into that, like, oh, it just makes you feel the same as you did.
Obviously, you're talking about stored emotions there, and that
Yeah.
these things trigger and they come out, I suppose, negatively because we end up in an argument or
Yeah.
something like that. But how do we deal with that stored, whether you call it trauma or
Yeah.
feelings or whatever it is? How can we deal with those? Because our body's very good at protecting us, isn't it? And I've, often seen people, whether it was suffering from grief or something from a childhood, that actually it's almost been hidden away and their body's just hidden it for
Yeah.
years, and then
That's right.
it comes out from another incident.
Yeah. So there's a process called letting go, and it's about so that's actually how I started. Was I worked with somebody and we went through that process, and so she would basically just talk to me and find ways to trigger me. And as soon as I felt triggered, so for me, a lot of it was fear. Anger, the base emotion of anger is fear. So if you see someone who's really angry, they're actually fearful of something. That's the actual base emotion. So for me, all of my emotion, fear, whatever you want to call it, is really in my stomach. That's where it lives. And so she would say something that would trigger me, and then I would just feel it. I would feel almost the uncomfortable pain, whatever you want to call it, in my stomach, and you just really feel it, and don't run away from it. It's like facing it, and you just feel it dissipate, and you just do this process again and again, and I would literally, after a couple of sessions, like, she would just appear on the screen and I'd just get triggered straight away. Like, she didn't even have to say anything. Like we could almost have like pretty much a silent session. I would just sit there, like just releasing emotions as they came up, because that was almost like the catalyst for me to be able to release. And once you start that process, then all these other emotions go, I'm ready to go as well. And you don't even need to know what the emotion that you're releasing is. It's just about releasing the factors that you're releasing the emotion. And the difference that makes is phenomenal, because you can literally see someone looks lighter and almost younger and better because they've taken this weight off them. And that's an ongoing process as well. And because there's so much of it, like we're living 24 hours a day, and all this stuff goes on, and there's so much. We have such a busy life, watching TV and reading books, and all the. I think you get a lot of trauma from watching and movies and that sort of thing, that we kind of, our brain thinks they're real, especially
Yeah.
books and that sort of thing, which are really detailed. I read a lot of Wilbur Smith books, and I'm pretty sure that didn't help me. Because he's a really good author, and he really describes it, and you actually feel like you're there, and you're actually
Yeah.
living it and experiencing it. But actually, that's actually causing you some kind of trauma internally. So yeah, and there's also something called the emotion code. I can't remember the doctor's name off the top of my head, but if you Google the emotion code, there's a guy that does a very similar process about releasing those emotions.
You mentioned there that we hold it physically, and you do see that, don't you, where people look strained or stressed
Yeah.
or, almost become unwell. It, is that really common from holding on to these things?
I mean, personally, I believe that a lot of illness comes from trapped emotions, because it's almost like a dark energy kind of thing. It's
Mm,
something that it is a physical thing, because stress is a physical thing. It has very physical impact on your body when you're very stressed out. You can sweat, and you can, your heart rate will rise. You'll become, the longer you're under stress, the more unhealthy you'll become.
mm.
Um, so yeah, the trapped emotions are very similar to a stress that you're just holding on to, and it does have a very physical effect on your body, and you can't, our bodies can heal themselves to a large degree, but when you've got all this stuff going on inside you, all this, anger and fear and worry and stress and all this kind of stuff, like, our body's not efficient, so it can't heal itself, and that's when we start getting problems.
What would be one of the first things someone should start to do who, maybe is listening and can start to recognize themselves, I guess, in some of these where they're sort of thinking, actually, when I have an argument, it really blows up, or when something happens, I get triggered. But what does someone need to first of all start? Is it just that initial understanding that you have been triggered?
Yeah, I mean, I think pretty much, I think there's probably very few people who haven't had some kind of childhood trauma in some way, shape, or form. I think we've all been through something. You also get generational trauma, which passes down from different generations, um, and you even get past life trauma. So there's work that I've done from past lives, which things have happened to me, and that carries on. Um, there's a lot of stuff that people go, oh, well, I don't believe in that, and that sort of thing, and you don't even necessarily have to believe it. But I think it's important that we understand that there is so much more to life than what we see in front of us. Like, I have a good analogy where it's like, let's say you join a really nice, big, fancy gym, and you go into the gym, and you go into it's got a nice big foyer, and you go in there and you think, oh, this is the gym, this is amazing, and you run up and down, and you think, oh, this is cool, this is, and you hop up and down and do whatever you want in the foyer, because you think that's the gym.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if you went through the gate, you'd actually see that there's like there's saunas and swimming pools and big gyms and workout rooms, and there's all massage tables. There's all this stuff, and that's a bit like life. Like we think this is life, but actually there's all this amazing stuff waiting for us. And it's just about being more open to seeing that and understanding that. And and it's just about doing the work on yourself and being willing to. For me, it's just about being a better person for my wife, being a better person for my son, and even for my dogs and that sort of thing. It's just about being a better person and what's it going to take to do that. And a lot of that is like I say, it's about awareness about what's going on. A lot of it as well is around doing what you love. So a lot of people, so validation is a great sort of topic to talk about, because I think there's some extremely rich people in this world who actually just chase validation. So they have billions of dollars. They're really unhappy. They don't actually enjoy their life because they're doing all these things. So when you're about 4 or 5 years old, you get validated by your father. So your father will go, okay, I acknowledge you as an individual, as a human. I love you unconditionally, and you're the love of my life, kind of thing, as a child.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't get that, if your father is not there, or is absent, or he's emotionally absent and doesn't recognize you, then you spend the rest of your life trying to prove to him that you are worthy. And they spend their whole lives doing this, and they cause a lot of problems in other people's lives and in the world in general, in this chasing, because you always know if enough is not enough, then you know that it's not pure. It doesn't come from a pure place. So if you go, okay, I want £1 million in the bank. That's what I want. And then you get there, and then it's like, no, I need more than that. I need 2 million, or it's like, how much? It's like, no, I just want as much money as possible. Like, there is no limit as to how much. And people chase this, and then they want a nice car, and then they want a better car, then they want a nice house, then they want a bigger house, and it's just this constant chasing. And that's all the underlying emotion for that is seeking validation. And people do this on Instagram as well, putting their pictures up on Instagram and that sort of thing. And they want people to comment on how great they look and all the rest of it. And it's just trying to get that validation, and enough's never enough. So you can't go, okay, if I have 10 likes, then I'll be happy. It's like, no, I need 1,000, or I need 3 million likes, or, enough's never enough. There's not enough likes out there to make yourself feel good about yourself. It's not possible. And there's no amount of money that's going to actually make you feel validated. So you just keep chasing it. So that's something else to be really aware of, is it's better to, I guess, chase, if that's the right word, about having a life that you love and doing something that you love and getting paid for it. That's the ultimate.
Yeah.
Get paid for doing something you love, rather than just going, I just don't chase money to get what you want. Just chase what you want instead.
Yeah. Do you think that, people seeking out validation has actually become worse with social media, because we've got things that we are comparing ourselves to? So you go back, hundreds of years, we lived in small tribes, and, we were only connected to a small amount of people. Now we're connected to people all over the world, and maybe it's human nature. We generally put out the highlight reel on social media, and not actually the sort of behind the scenes, the real life. Do you think that's making the validation sort of system worse?
It's definitely the big problem is that when you go out to seek validation and you don't get it, that's worse. Because now you've gone out, you've put your face on there, or you've taken your shirt off or whatever, and you're going, okay, let's see what everyone thinks. And then, you get a couple of hateful comments and, no likes or something like that. And then you go, oh gosh, and then you feel really bad about yourself, because now, like, you've kind of put yourself out there, and now everyone's just like rejected you. So that's the biggest harm with social media, etc., is that people base their self-worth on all these unknown people, all with their own issues and their own opinions and their own likes and dislikes, and you're trying to get validated, and you're trying to get something back from these unknown people, which just doesn't work, and can have the opposite effect and make you, because there's lots of people. I mean, yeah, there's lots of people who have committed suicide based on their social media interactions and that sort of thing, and just, I guess, just nasty people out there saying horrible things to them, and them taking it to heart, and taking it personally. I'll say something quickly about taking things personally. So whenever somebody says something to you, some more than likely negative. So if someone says to you, I don't like what you did, or I don't like you, or I don't like your hair, or lack of hair, or whatever it could be, something like that. That is never personal. It always, for the person saying it, it's always a reflection of them, of what they're saying to you. It's their own reflection that they're projecting onto you. So when you learn to not take things personally, that's extremely empowering. Because, like, someone can literally be shouting at you in the street because they think, of how you parked, or maybe you didn't park straight or something like that. And then, like, they triggered massively, and they, like, freaking out, and they're shouting and screaming at you about your parking, and it's nothing to do with you. And that's really important to understand, that not to take things personally. Okay, maybe park a bit straighter next time. But that whole outburst of theirs is nothing to do with you, and it's got nothing to do with your self-worth or anything like that.
I used to work in more of a customer service role, and I often used to try and remind myself that if there's someone shouting and getting really angry, it's normally not the issue that they're speaking to me about.
Exactly.
It's normally that they've had an argument in the morning, the car wouldn't start, they dropped their coffee, they got caught in traffic, all of these things. And then I used to get the brunt of it because there was an issue. And I guess there is a little bit of that, of understanding it isn't always you that's actually the issue.
And I was really bad at that. I would really I would be that person having a go at customer service and that sort of thing, because I expected things and everything like that, and really again, that self-awareness that really was instrumental in going, actually, it's important to understand that the person you're speaking to is not actually making the decisions. Like, they're not a manager, or they're not the leader of the company doing whatever the problem is, whether your parcel got lost on the post or got squashed or whatever happened. Like, the person you speak to is not actually responsible. Like, they're just trying to help you. And it's important to understand that as well, and being self-aware, again, self-awareness of going, actually, and going back a step as well about self-responsibility is it's about energy. So it's about the energy that you bring into the conversation. So we always seem to have problems in our business with our supplies. Like, our supplies are always driving us mad. And it's about doing the work on that and going, okay, so what's going on here? Because other companies like ours are not having the same experience that we have. And that's not a physical thing. That's an energy thing. So what energy are we bringing into the conversation where we are always getting a negative outcome? So it's important to understand how your energy is when you're coming into a conversation, and are you, it's a little bit like the negative self-talk. You're kind of going into the conversation expecting a bad outcome, and that's what you get. Yeah. And then you're kind of almost validated, because you're going, see, I told you that, they're a rubbish company, because this is all they did. But when you're always expecting that, that's what you get. So, there's something around your thoughts creating your reality. So you're always creating your own reality based on your energy that going into a conversation. So it's important as well to set your intention. And that's what you should do every day, is like set your intention before you go on a long drive on holiday or something like that. It's like, okay, let's set our intention that we're going to not get affected by what's going on around us. Because when you don't sweat the small stuff, you have a totally different experience. So if something happens, sorry, I'm jumping all over the place.
Yeah, I'm enjoying this.
But when something, if you going on a flight and then the flight's delayed or something else, you go, okay, well, it is. And what's happening in reality is that the universe is sort of the universe or God, whatever you want to believe in, wants you to be the best version of yourself. That's the aim of God and the universe. Is it wants you to be the best version of yourself, and so it tests you, and it gives you little things because it's like, okay, well, I'm going to delay the flight, and then I'm going to see how you react, and you go fucking
yeah,
you go mental. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to have to do that again because I'm just going to have to keep doing it until you learn the lesson. And that's what, and again, when you see that that's what's going on in your life every day, the universe is going, okay, let's see how you deal with this. And when you don't react, or when you go, okay, now that's fine, then it goes, okay, well, we don't have to do that again because you've learned the lesson. So, for example, going into the gym car park, I'd have these like incidents where like someone tries to run me over, or people just really aggressive in the car park. I'm like, what's going on here? It's like a different world. Like in the gym versus the car park, it's like Beirut in the car park. And then my wife's like, well, that never happens to me. It's like, okay, let's change my energy around it. Let's not get affected, by anything that happens. And then if someone does something, it's like, yeah, whatever. And then it doesn't happen again. And then suddenly it's like, oh, that doesn't happen to me anymore, because it's about how you're reacting to what's going on around you, and how, and the energy you're taking. And it's like, okay, because very much about that whole creative side is about, one of the easy things to try is creating your perfect parking place. So it's like, okay, I'm going to get to the gym and I'm going to be able to park, whether it's out directly outside the doors, or whether it's in a nice big wide space, or wherever it is, or you've got another favorite space. And it's practicing trying to create that for every time you go to the gym. And you'll be surprised when you put the right energy and that sort of thing into it, that's what happens. And that's a really interesting way you start to realize, actually, this stuff does work.
You do hear people say things like, why does this always happen to me?
Yes.
And I guess that links back to the reason it's happening to you is because it's affecting you and triggering you. And that's why it keeps happening.
You're not learning the lesson. So the universe has to keep going, well, I've got to keep going, because when you do learn the lesson, then you become, you step up and you go, okay, flight's delayed, we'll just, go sit in the lounge or have another coffee or do whatever we've got to do, or make a plan. It's not the end of the world. And in reality, most things are not the end of the world. That's the reality. Most things that happen to you that you freak out about are not actually the end of the world. And when you react differently to these things, then you step up a level. You're like, okay, these things, let's just deal with it. Let's find a way to deal with it. And that's you being a better version of yourself, rather than this shouty, aggressive, reactive person, which is a lower level, a lower vibration person.
I guess that is bringing your energy. I mean, we see it, don't we, where someone can really change the energy in a room, and
Yes.
equally change the energy in a situation. Because quite often, if we go back to what we were talking with at the start, if your flight's delayed, okay, it's been delayed. That's sort of in the past. So for whatever reason, it's been, you can't change that. Okay, how do we deal with it now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just like exactly like you said, like it's happened, like we can't change that. So, and the same being stuck in a traffic jam or something like that. And it's, I did this actually maybe a few years ago. Like, we were stuck in traffic. We were going off to Wales on camping, and I started to envisage the traffic moving at the front of the queue. Like they'd cleared the roadblock, whatever it was, the accident, and the traffic was starting to move. And then, like a minute later, you started to move, and that sort of thing. So it's just about, it's about going, okay, let's not get angry about it, because then that's that's the negative energy. Let's be positive, and what positive thing can you do? It's like, okay, let's just imagine or envisage that, okay, they've cleared it and we're going to start moving again, and doing that sort of exercise and all these different things. Okay, the flight's delayed. Okay, let's see what we can try and create here, that they're going to sort whatever the problem is out, or the problem isn't as bad as they thought, and then they're like, okay, we're back on, not a problem, and it's just play. It's just being playful, because you've got nothing to lose.
Visualizing those positive outcomes.
Yeah, exactly.
Is this that visualization?
Yeah.
Okay. If just to finish off today, because I've absolutely loved this conversation and we've covered a fair bit, but what is one thing people can start to introduce into their life to just start on this process? Is it just trying to take a moment when something happens to actually look at the situation? Because I now try and do that a little bit. Like you say, if the glass breaks, rather than reacting straight away, just trying to pause a second so that I've got control over the situation, rather than just my brain going off on one. But what can people start to do?
I mean, just in relation to that, there's a quite a famous psychologist called Steve Peters, and he wrote a book called The Chimp Paradox.
Yeah,
great
book.
So that's interesting in terms of your chimp and your human, and your chimp always reacts first, and that's that rah, that's the angry chimp, and then your human takes over and it goes like, hold on a minute, this situation isn't actually that bad, let's be more human about this. And it's just about almost controlling your chimp and that sort of thing, and just being aware that, okay, my chimp's going to react to this stuff, so let's try and, I guess it's about pausing, isn't it? It's like, okay, let's pause, let's process what's going on, rather than doing or saying anything. Let's stop and pause for a moment and see what's going on. And then, a really good thing that came up for me was, like with my wife, for example, is like, she might do something, or could be, use the scour on a really dirty pan, and you've got to throw away a brand new scour. It's like, and always ask yourself, is it worth falling out about? And it's those little questions that it's really about self-awareness, and it's just like asking yourself the little questions, and just going, as an example, is it worth falling out about? Is it worth making us, having this argument and everything else about it, when it doesn't cross your mind whatsoever? Men and women think differently. Like it's probably nothing that crosses their mind and that you get annoyed about, and vice versa. So it's like, is it really worth falling out about? It's like, no, not really. It's just I guess just reading more. There's a book called Letting Go. I forget the name of who wrote it, but yeah, like I mentioned, the emotion code and letting go, and that's where I started, and I think that gives you, by letting go of emotions, I think it gives you the space to then start doing more work on yourself.
Colin, thank you so much for joining me today. I've absolutely loved our conversation. Thank you for being so open and honest at the start there, and giving us some great tips. So thank you once again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Balanced Ambition podcast. I genuinely hope the stories inspire you as much as they inspire me. If you found value in today's conversation, please share it with a friend. And remember, by subscribing, you won't miss an episode, and it would truly mean the world to me. Stay balanced, and I'll see you next time.